AC Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devam Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devam Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayam Mudiraye.
Tato Jayam Mudiraye.
Nasta Praeshu Apadreshu. Nidhyam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Utamashloke. Bhavati Naishtiki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer his respectful obeisances unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana, the supermost human being Narayana Rishi, the author Vyasadeva and goddess of learning Saraswati. By regularly attending classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, is established within the heart as an irrevocable fact, and everything that is inauspicious is dispelled. We're reading today from Srimad Bhagavatam, 9th canto, text 28, chapter 4. Ambarish Maharaj offended by Durvasa Muni. Please repeat. Tasma Adad Dharish Chakram Tasma Adad Dharish Chakram Pratyanika Bhayavaham Pratyanika Bhayavaham Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Prito Bhakta Birakshanam Prito Bhakta Birakshanam Tasma Adattarish Chakram Pratyanika Bhayavaham Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Prito Bhakta Birakshanam Tasma Adattarish Chakram Pratyanika Bhayavaham Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Prito Bhakta Bharisanam. Let's repeat.
Pratyanika Bhayavaham Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Prito Bhakta Virakshanam
Tasmayadad Dharish Chakram Pratyanika Bhayavaham Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Prita Bhaktaya Virakshana
Tasmadat Dharish Chakram Pratyanika Bhayavaham Ekanta Bhakti Bhavena Bhakta Bhirakshanam
word. Tasmai, unto him, Ambarish Maharaj, Adad gave, Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
the Supreme Personality of Godhead,
Chakram, his disc, Pratyanika, Bhaya, Avaham, the Lord's disc, which was extremely fearful to the enemies of the Lord and his devotees. Ikanta Bhakti Bhavena, because of his performing unalloyed devotional service. Krita, the Lord being so pleased. Bhakta Abhirakshanam, for the protection of his devotees. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Being very pleased by the unalloyed devotion of Maharaj Ambarish, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gave the king his disc, which is fearful to enemies and which always protects the devotee from enemies and adversities. Purport. A devotee, being always engaged in the service of the Lord, may not be expert in self-defense, but because a devotee fully depends on the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is always sure of protection by the Lord. Prahlada Maharaja said, Naivud vijay parajudatyaya vaitaranyas tvat viryagayana mahamrita magnachita. Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th Canto, 9th chapter, verse 43. A devotee is always merged in the ocean of the transcendental bliss, rendering service to the Lord. Jai Shri Radha Parisisvara, Jai Jagannath Ravi Subhata Sudarshan Chakra, Shingare Panchatattva, Jai Gita Shati Shuja, Guru Parampara Ki.
Jai.
A devotee is always merged in the ocean of transcendental bliss, of rendering service to the Lord. Therefore, he is not at all afraid of any adverse situation in the material world. The Lord also promises, Kauntiya pratijana janahina me bhakta pranashyati. O Arjuna, you may declare to the world that the devotees of the Lord are never vanquished. Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, verse 31. For the protection of the devotees, Krishna's disc, the Sudarshan Chakra, is always ready. This disc is extremely fearful to the non-devotees. Pratyanika bhayavaham. Therefore, although Maharaj Ambarish was fully engaged in devotional service, his kingdom was free of all fear of adversity. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanam Jana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadhamayam Dadhati Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvetam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Even though being insignificant and in this elevated position of reciting Srimad Bhagavatam in front of devotees that are senior to one and that are maybe more experienced and elevated in their practice, still we beg for mercy. We beg for mercy to the Vaishnava devotees that they may not throw their Sudarshan disc and kill me immediately on the spot and give me a little help in reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam. We should always beg for mercy, feeling insignificant, lower than the straw on the street, being devoid of all sense of false prestige, giving all respects to others. So please let me glorify the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord, like Ambarish Maharaj, as well as the most beloved devotee of the Lord, that is the Sudarshan Chakra, which is right here on the altar next to Jagannath. Sudarshan Chakra is there. And Ambarish Maharaj, who's already a very elevated devotee, he gets this wonderful gift of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He received the Sudarshan Chakra as a present. And also he received it by the Lord himself, which is a very, very wonderful benediction. If we receive devotional service, that is the greatest benediction. But sometimes in a position like Ambarish Maharaj or Prithu Maharaj, as stated in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, they received certain paraphernalia by the Lord. Prithu Maharaj also received the Sudarshan disc, but it is stated there in the purport that this Sudarshan disc is not the full representative of the Lord, it's just a partial representation, meaning that even though one receives a paraphernalia or a gift from the Supreme Lord, it is merely a partial representation of that paraphernalia, meaning that the Sudarshan disc that Ambarish received, it was little to say a representation of what it is really. And we can only have a sort of understanding what the Sudarshan disc is if we dive a bit into the Shastras and we do a little bit of research. And we find many, many wonderful quotes of how Krishna uses this disc, what it is, how it looks like, and how in the darkness of ignorance, this Sudarshan disc is dispelling the ignorance. When we read Krishna book, we get to know that Sudarshan disc a bit. The 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam very much tells the stories of Krishna in Dwarka as a king, and oftentimes Krishna had problems with other kings like Shalva or Pandraka or Shishupal. And Shalva, Pandraka and Shishupal, they got the highest benediction, receiving also the disc. But this, as a benediction, was their death. And by that being said, they attained liberation. Pandraka, Shalva and Shishupal, they all received the disc as the mortal crux of their life. And that was a benediction for them. Because receiving the mercy of the Lord as a devotee means that we receive the favor of the Lord by being engaged in his service. But an antagonist, a demon, or non-devotee, as it is stated here in the purport, Prabhupada is only hinting it, but he's writing it in another purport, the demons, they receive the disc as death personified. Now here in the purport it says non-devotee. Who's meant with non-devotee in the story? Ambarish, and who is else in the story? Who is the non-devotee? Durvasha. Exactly. And why is he a non-devotee? I thought he's a great mystic yogi. Why is he a non-devotee?
He's against the devotee.
He's antagonistic to the devotee, as mentioned here in the example of Ambarish Maharaj. He actually offended Ambarish Maharaj, which is, we were reciting the 10 offenses against the holy name every morning, and it says that to blaspheme the devotees that have dedicated their life of propagating the holy name of the Lord, that blasphemy, it can be crucial in our spiritual process, not if it can be our death. And Durvasa Muni, not to spoil too much of the story, he got close to death of that chakra, which is described as thousands of blazing suns. It has thousands of strokes, spikes, and it is fearful. It is so fearful. It even is so effulgent like the sun and the moon and all the other fires, and it is dispelling all darkness. It is used by Krishna to kill demons, but at the same time, this Sudarshan disc can be used as a weapon to protect the devotees, as stated in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Paritranaya sarunam vinashayam chaduskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Krishna, he appears to protect the devotees and to annihilate the miscreants. And there are 4 kinds of miscreants. What does Krishna state further in the Bhagavad Gita? Who are the 4 types of miscreants? Okay.
That's the
What's-
first time.
What's the first one? We have to start with the more innocent ones.
Papadanti Naradama.
Muna.
Naradama. Who is the Naradama?
Muna.
The lowest of the human
The
beings.
lowest of the human beings. We can see maybe somebody who's working very hard. The lowest Naradama Prabhupada would say is like an ass. It's like a working animal, just carrying loads up and down. And he's working so hard to eventually, at the end of the day, to get kicked by the she-ass. And that is the reward, that a little bit of sense and yeah, that is the Naradama. So it's not even a human, you could say. It's underneath, just a working animal. And then there is, what was the next one?
Mula Naradham Mayaparitagana Nasarim Bhavastuta.
Yeah, you already mentioned all of them. Naradama, okay, what's the next one? Naradama. And then there was?
Mayaparitagana.
And that's the third one? What is this one in between?
First one is Mula.
Mudha, oh, that's the working animal, yes. Okay, Mudha, Naradama, and then Maya Apartagyan, and then what do we have?
Asarim Bhavana.
What's my favorite one? Asura Bhavan. And now is the question, who's Durvasa Muni? What category does he classify as? He's a mystic yogi, like. So what is he? Or is he a devotee disguised as a non-devotee? I'm not so sure about Durvasa Muni.
Mayaparitagana or Asarim
I did a bit of research on Durvasa Muni. You want to hear a story about Durvasa Muni? Want to hear something about Durvasa Muni? Oh God. And Durvasa Muni, of course, he is named Durvasa because of the Durva grass, I heard. And he was performing austerities at Vimla Kund in Vrindavan. And if you go to that kunda, we were there actually, we were there taking a darshan of that kunda, where Durvasa Muni performed austerities. And this kunda, if I'm not mistaken, if it was that kunda, it was green.
It is green.
It is green.
Really green.
It is really green. And we were wondering, why is it so green? But then, of course, the Durva is green. So Durvasa Muni, he explained here as a non-devotee because he was using his mystic powers. And as mystic powers, he started to offend devotees, other devotees of the Lord that are more elevated than him. Now is the question, what distinguishes a devotee and a non-devotee? In the purport, in the verse, there's a very important word. It says ekanti or ekanta. Ekanta, that's a very, very important word. Ekanta bhakti bhavena. This is the sentiment, the mood of a real devotee. Because Durvasa Muni, he might be engaged in so many mystic activities to attain so many powers and to do so many things. Mystic yogis, they can do all sorts of things. They have all these asta cities, Lagima, Mahima, and so on and so forth. They can expand, they can make themselves very small, they can travel with the mind everywhere. But these cities, they are not desirable for the devotee, because the devotee is ekanta bhakti bhavena. He's in the mood of solely serving Krishna. According to the principle that is given in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anukulyena Krishna Nushilanam Bhakti Uttama. What's that? Kama Gyana Gyana Karma Anavritam. Yes, that's what it is. Karma. So it is devoid Anavritam Anukulyena Krishna. Anyavilasa, that's how it starts. Anyavilasita shunyam is devoid. Devoid shunyam, devoid of all the karma and gyan. And the mystic yogis, that is part of it. Monistic philosophy, speculative philosophy, monistic. And then karma, fruit of activities, and also yogic powers. It's not mentioned specifically, but it is there that the devotee is ekanta bhakti bhavena. Ekanta, he's unalloyed, he's solely serving ananya bhakti. That is the sole purpose of the devotee, is to only serve Krishna as he likes, as he favors, as he is pleased. And that includes following the Shastras, following the rules and regulations, the Vedis, following the instructions of the spiritual master. Shakshat is also such a word, Shakshat Haritvena Samasasha, that directly mitigated, directly representing the Supreme Lord. So we should be directly serving Krishna. That is the difference of a devotee who's directly serving Krishna in the mood of bhakti. And that is what we're trying to achieve as sadhana bhaktas. As sadhana bhaktas, we're trying to follow in that mood of Ambarish Maharaj, who personally, when I was reading Bhagavad Gita in the 6th chapter of Dhyana Yoga, is very nicely described. I thought, this is amazing. I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't even in the temple. I hadn't even gone, well, I was in the temple before, but I wasn't really engaged in service. And when I read about Ambarish Maharaj, he was doing everything with all the parts of his bodies. He used his eyes. What did he use his eyes with? To look at the beautiful forms, the transcendental forms of the deity. And they look back at them. Yeah. And what did he do with his ears? Ambarish Maharaj, he heard the transcendental sound vibration, Bhagavatam, Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And what did he do with his tongue? It's described in Bhagavad Gita. What did he do with his tongue? He tasted the tulasi leaves. And what did he do with his body? He fully prostrated himself in the temple. And what did he do with his legs? He walked to all the places of pilgrimages, and he used his hands to clean the temple. So all these activities of all the limbs of the body are engaged, and then reading about Ambarish Maharaj, that's a great inspiration. How does he do that? He's so devoted just to please the Lord with every extremity of his body, and that is his victory. That is Bhakti Yoga. Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam rishikena rishikesha sevanam bhakti uchate. That definition of bhakti given in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains that there are two side effects of bhakti. First is that we are
Sarvopati Vinamukta.
Sarvopari vinimuktam. We are freed from all of the designations. I am king, I am minister, I am temple commander, I am president of the United States, I am Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Indian, German, Russian, French. I am so many things. But all these designations, we have been freed of all these designations. And the second side effect is Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti. That through devotional service, Rishikena Rishikesha, all the senses are put in the service of the master of the senses, and thus the senses are being purified. Meaning that suddenly we can see Krishna. In the beginning, we might come to the temple and we think, oh, Nrsimhadev, oh, Jagannath, oh, the big eyes looking at me. And then we cannot even look at them because they are so transcendently pure that the deities, they seem kind of fearful to one. And thus, by being engaged in Bhakti Yoga, we become more and more purified. The eyes become more and more acquainted with the form of the Lord. Our senses are more and more adjusted to the sounds. In the beginning, we might think, what is this kind of madhouse? Everybody clanging and banging. This is just crazy. But then after some time, we get to appreciate the sweet sounds of the cymbals, mridangas, and that means that we are being purified through Bhakti Yoga, but we have to be engaged in practical service. Otherwise, we are not getting anywhere. So Ambarish gives an example, so many things we can do. Cleaning the dust, bringing out the trash, doing handiwork, practice, clean the toilets, so many things. Chanting Hare Krishna, you can always chant Hare Krishna. Like Indra Prabhu, he would chant Hare Krishna like a madman. He was on the altar like a very pure Brahmin. And but nobody knew that who was cleaning the toilets. It was him as well. So there's no border, no boundary to our limit of service that we can render. And first services, of course. What are the 9 processes of devotional service? The first one is Shravanam, yes. And the second one is Kirtanam. And the third one is Shmoranam. And so we go through all the processes. And the fourth one, Parasivanam. And the fifth one is Janam, Vandanam, and Dasyam, and Sakyam. And the last one is Bali Maharaj. We just had it in the 8th canto. Very good. Wonderful. So these 9 processes we can all be engaged in. All these 9 processes are there. We just have to engage us. And if we cannot do anything, if we are really mudha, then just hear Hare Katha. Just sit and hear. And even in Bhagavatam class, we heard it yesterday. And we heard it the day before, why this pastime is very, very important. Doinitai Prabhu was mentioning how there is pure renunciation and there's false renunciation. False renunciation, there's also a sign of a non-devotee. But there is, you could say, transcendental renunciation of a devotee, which is executed by Ambarish Maharaj. That makes a whole lot of difference. The devotee is always engaged in tapasya. And that might be service, going out for books, that's a big tapasya, into the streets, giving people the nectar, the juice. And people, they are just like, wow, what is this? I've always been looking for that. And then they don't know what's inside. So we open it up and they scream. The people, they might be afraid, oh, this is too much. Arjuna and Krishna on the battlefield, oh my God. And then they may run away or they start to be aggressive. We had it once. He took the book and he wanted to slam it on the floor. It was 2 years ago. We went with the Harinam Ruchi to one matcha, and he had the book in his hand, and he was really much like, this is too much tapasya. And he lifted it up, the Bhagavad Gita, and he was about to throw it. But then, I think it was Gauranataraj, he jumped in, attacked him with his Sudarshan chakra, and he saved the Bhagavad Gita. He saved it. So that was very nice. All these tapasya that we perform. But the non-devotee, like Durvasa Muni, he is engaged in, you could say, artificial tapasya. So that makes a whole lot of difference of bhakti, of a bhakta, a pure devotee and a non-devotee. The pure devotee is always engaged, favorable in the service for Krishna. He is always acting in such a way to please Krishna. A non-devotee, he does his action whimsically out of his own independent um, monistic philosophy or fruitive activity, and he might have motives that are not desirable for Krishna. So that is the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee, and we always have to see in our sadhana, oh, is this action that I perform, is my mind now in the pure conscious state that I'm performing now favorable devotional service, or is it more like unfavorable? And a good example is always food. You never know. When we come to be hungry, we would eat anything if you're really hungry. So we have to make a kind of a good bargain. We have to make the best out of a bad bargain. Prabhupada would say that practically, that everything as we use it in the service of Krishna. And that we heard very wonderfully yesterday from Rasa Parayan Prabhu, this principle of Yukta Vairagya, that in our sadhana, that we use anything in the service for Krishna, and that we try to please Krishna with it, please Krishna with our ideas, with our actions. When we have food and we offer it to Krishna, if we are sitting in the plane or somewhere, in travel, and we have to do it in the mind. Anyhow, it is to please Krishna in our consciousness. Ambarish was very much an example of somebody who likes to please Krishna, tasting the tulasi leaf, cleaning, making so many arrangements for the Lord in the temple. So we want to follow the example of Ambarish. What more to say is that, of course, there's many descriptions, but I would like to give a little bit of Prabhupada, how Prabhupada resembled that, how he exemplified a king, you could say, a transcendental king like Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj, he had a big kingdom. Prabhupada had a big kingdom. Basically, the whole world was his realm. And Srila Prabhupada, as an emperor of the whole world, he had many ministers under him that were not always, what I was saying. But Prabhupada, he had to manage all this. Prabhupada had to manage all of this kingdom, his ministers, his temples, and so on and so forth. And then we can understand that Prabhupada, he was a sincere devotee of the Lord. Why so? How come that Prabhupada was such a pure devotee, such a pure bhakta, always in the mood of ekanta bhakti bhavina? Maybe you can give each one a reason. Why was Prabhupada such a pure bhakta in that mood of ekanta bhakti bhavina? Can come up with one reason each? Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. I mean, there's one simple reason you could say. The first principal reason that I would come up with is that Prabhupada was always following in the footsteps of the Vaishnavas. And that is to say that he was very much growing up in a Vaishnava family. His father was teaching him Vaishnava etiquette and culture. He was then, of course, in school education, but then he found Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who stamped the Vaishnava mission, Chaitanya's mission, into his book. And Prabhupada was always following in the Vaishnava footsteps, learning the bhajans of the Vaishnavas, having always Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavatam at his side. Prabhupada was fully fixed on the Vaishnava footsteps, on the lotus footsteps of the Vaishnavas, and also on the Shastra. And that reason alone stands so strong. Of course, there could be many more reasons that he was empowered, he came from the spiritual world, Krishna, he gave him the knowledge, and maybe also his disc, maybe Krishna empowered Srila Prabhupada with the Sudarshana Chakra, which maybe, turned out to be his pen, and his words turning ignorance into knowledge. So that is Prabhupada. Prabhupada was always in the mood of ikanta bhakti bhavana. His devotees, his disciples, they would speculate. And there were so many instances where they would speculate. Haribol, Lokanath Maharaj, she would ask, is it allowed? We hear the Gaudiyas, they chant Haribol. Can we chant Haribol in our kirtans?
Yes.
And Prabhupada, it was in Juhu Beach. Prabhupada was just on a morning walk. Sometimes he would just stand and he would wait for a moment and he would look at them and he would give a short answer like, that's all right. And then he would continue walking. But then what happened? The devotees, they started chanting Hari Bol. And they started chanting Hari Bol, 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 Hari Bol. And then it didn't stop for 15 minutes. And Prabhupada had to say, he had to use a Sudarshan disc and he would say, now stop. That's it. No more Hari Bol. So better chant Hare Krishna. Another case, I think it was Shyama Sundar, who had invested lots of funds from Prabhupada's mission, from the book distribution, into gold. Why invest into gold? And Prabhupada would say, don't speculate. Don't use the funds. Don't speculate like that. Use them in the service for Krishna, for printing more books. And that was also Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's instruction. Whenever you get money, print books. Yes. So that's what we do. Thank you so much. I think that was a little bit of from my side. Please let me hear from your side what's on your mind. If you have anything to add, maybe some speculation, maybe you have a suggestion. Yes. My dear Revati.
One reason for Ambarish to get the Sudarshan disc is that he was so humble as a king that he would not dare to protect himself if someone would attack him.
Amazing.
So Krishna thought, I have to protect my devotee because he is so humble, he won't protect himself, he's so caring even for his enemies. He have to protect him. So he gave him the disc.
Ambarish Maharaj received the Sudarshan disc because he was such a humble soul that he wouldn't hurt anyone. He would just protect, basically. It's a very, very wonderful a reason which I haven't thought about. And I think that to be humble, that might be also applied to our devotional lives. That if we are humble, and that is a whole topic in itself, how to find shelter, how to surrender to the spiritual master, to Krishna, to the devotees, how to find shelter in ashram, and so many things. Poshanam, it's a whole topic in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have Prahlad Maharaj, there's Gajendra, there's so many devotees of the Lord who are being protected by the Lord because they have been humbly engaged in ikanta bhakti bhavana, in that unalloyed devotional service. Thank you. Revatinana Prabhu. All right. Thank you. Narita, like to say
I'm just getting older. The services Ambarish Maharaj is doing. Myself is also like almost trying to do this kind of service, but why I am not getting elevated?
Why is Narita Prema Mai Narita? Because you're already Prema Mai. Where do you want to go?
Complete.
Yeah, that is a good question. In general, we could ask, like, I'm doing so much service, and why am I not getting a big Sudarshan disc which I can kill all the all the non-devotees in a shuttle day or something?
No, no need of this, but at least the love.
Well, you will see, I mean, there's a saying in the English world that says, what's that, with responsibility comes power. So if you take on greater responsibility, you will receive more, but you'll be more empowered. Prabhupada encouraged his disciples to take on big services. Go to Africa, go to Pakistan, preach, and open temples, go to the ministers, go to the kings, go to big challenges, and you see that through the mercy of the Vaishnavas and through the mercy of Srila Prabhupada, with the responsibility, the empowerment grows. And that is something that we don't have to experience. We can stay at home and do humble service to the deity. We can chant nicely. We can do so much nice service with cleaning the temple rooms. And that is also perfectly fine. Devotional service doesn't distinguish. Bhakti Devi is always very merciful. So, you could say, time will show. Eventually. Yeah, it is Krishna's mercy.
With this verse, one topic I think is interesting to discuss is how the Lord is it partial or impartial, because we heard Samoha Sarvabhuteshu, and we is really not like partial in this situation.
Yes.
So this is a topic I think very interesting to discuss.
What would you say in this case? Is Krishna partial to Durvasa Muni?
Ambarish.
This is a question to you.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic in general, because that question is often a question of preachers received from other religions, from other castes, creeds, from other traditions, that, okay, you have one God and he is blue and plays a flute, all right. But then is the question, why does he like sandalwood? And why does he engage his devotees in such and such service of tending the tulasi and chanting and dancing? Why is that so? And on the other hand, he is a fierce prince on a battlefield, and he's blowing a big conch shell, and he's throwing wheels, a chakra, or Bhishmadev, he's throwing wheels at people. I mean, go on, where's the fine line of partiality? Because the one part is that, is he good to everyone, sarvabhuteshu, and on the other hand is suddenly he's favoring the non-devotee, suddenly he's favoring the devotee, and suddenly he is dispelling, he's killing the non-devotees. I mean, you could always bring up one argument that I found is a bit lacking in the minds of maybe the Christians and the Muslims and so many other religionists and practitioners of a spiritual path. They may not understand that the soul is eternal. With that lack of understanding, they might think, oh, yes, Krishna, he might have killed Shishupal, but that is very bad. But by understanding that Krishna and the jiva, they're eternally connected, and the jiva is also eternal, and by being killed, only the body is killed. Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, in that example, was the Lord partial to Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, or was it more like a blessing to Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu? And so on the superficial level, without the understanding, which most Christians, they might have it, or they might not, or common people in general on the streets in Châtelet, I'm thinking of so many people that might wonder, like, why is this so? And then we could bring that argument that in due course of time, Krishna has his pastimes, and he enacts these pastimes to always express his own wonderful pleasure, which is the greatest pleasure for all. And at some point, his fighting pleasure, his viryabhav, takes on the shape of killing. Hey, it's so nice, killing. He likes it very much. He likes to kill some rascals and demons. And why not? Prabhupada also had this mood sometimes exhibited. Mr. Nair and Juhu and other devotees, they report that Prabhupada was actually very happy. Now we could ask, was Prabhupada partial? You might say that in that instance, he was actually blessing Mr. Nair, his wife. He was blessing them. because they were acting antagonistic and they had to take on that role, and in that Nitya Lila, who knows who they are. But Prabhupada gave them a blessing by giving them a good lesson. So the same principle applies, and it is to see through the vision of the Shastras that these are eternal pastimes. Prabhupada's Leela is also, in a way, eternally going on. And that we have to see in our lives that sometimes Krishna really plays a trick on us, and he really defeats us in our ignorance. And then we feel like that. It's like, no, Krishna is so partial. He doesn't give me Chanamrita. It's all empty. You know, sometimes you come in the morning and you think, oh, now just be so perfect. You have a little drop of Chanamrita. And then it's all empty. And you think, no, how can I survive? Krishna is so cruel. No Chanamrita. And then we actually think that, no, he wants to help you to stay in a pure mind, in a pure consciousness, so that I can do my service nicely. And yeah, that is a very nice discussion. It's a very nice discussion that can go on for lots of times and topics. And yeah, we shouldn't be partial, especially with prashadam. Everyone gets prashad, even devotees and non-devotees. Speaking of which, the taste buds are active. Anything more?
Actually, we did debating in our temple on this topic,
On this
whether
topic.
Krishna is partial or not.
Yes.
And it was like continuing for 1 hour. Finally, we defeated. we are on the side that Krishna is partial.
Yeah, interesting. We could do that also. We could build up a circle and we get 2 teams and say, yes, Krishna is partial. We get some nice references from Shastra, and we could have a team that says, no, Krishna not partial. He's Sarva. He's all friend to all assurance. Sarva Bhutanam. He's the friend of all living beings. Yeah, and it would go on for hours and hours and hours. And it would be a nice discussion. It's good to practice that also. Yeah, very nice idea.
Actually, I did an essay on this topic
Yeah.
in Bhakti Yoga.
Nice.
And it's very important to understand if it's partial or impartial, because if we have the idea that it's impartial, we lose the desire to preach.
Mm.
My conclusion in the essay was like this, that if we want to understand the Lord and understand the mode of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we should realize how much impartial, how much partial is the Lord. Sorry. So this is very important to understand. And you said the main thing is that by killing a demon, he's killing actually his own suffering.
Yes.
By doing sinful activities, he's beating himself.
Yeah.
So when the Lord killed him, he helped him to become free of his suffering. And we know from Shastra that when he kills, he gives liberation. And even sometimes he gives a position in spiritual world, like Putana.
Yeah.
And the Acharya used many times the example of Putana to glorify the Srimad Bhagavatam and to glorify the Lord as so partial and partial. And partial.
And like you said, for the preacher, it's good to understand the partiality, that we can make a difference of devotees and non-devotees, so that we can purify ourselves, basically, like that. And that we all need. We need to preach, and we need to have that vision. And Radha Parisisvara, what's on the schedule? Prashada.
Haribo.
Before that, I'd like to express my views on that. Krishna is not impartial. He is giving opportunity to everybody. Everybody can become his devotees. And if somebody does not choose to become his devotees, then he shows the impartiality.
That means
So
ultimately,
option is available for everybody, and everybody can become a devotee. Nobody is barred from being a devotee, be it from any, from anywhere, any mentality. But if somebody chooses not to be a devotee, still Krishna, benefit him by killing him.
So it's like a
Achintya Vedanta.
yes. But if you look in the definition of the partiality, then your decision may be a little bit changed.
What do you definition? No, we just want to understand how do you describe.
No, we are not going to make a debate here now.
No, it's not debate. We to try to understand in our life. We want to understand what the definition of partiality is.
So
It's like,
the discussion continues on. Is the Lord partial or not? We will have a breakfast discussion.
depends.
Actually, both are true.
Srimad
Yeah,
Bhagavatam
both
ki.
are true.
Gantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Yeah.
Srila Prabhupada ki. Both are true, Narottam. Premamaya says both are true. How can that be?
You can say Lord Rama is impartial.
This is too easy.